I have with me a gentleman today. He is an athlete. He's an entrepreneur. He is a business owner. He's a trainer. He's got his hands in all kinds of private security. This guy is one of the busiest guys out there. And he took time to spend a little bit of time with us today to talk about some pretty significant issues. Kerry KingBrown, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So I got to tell you, you came on my radar because of a new app that you're developing. We'll talk about that first. But as I got to as I reached out to you, and then I started looking at your background, I'm like, this guy is pretty amazing. So I want people to know about your background. You kind of started out as an athlete, right? But then your life took a whole different turn. So tell people about your background.
Well, again, I started in football. I didn't start playing until I was 9 years old. I kind of started late. And I noticed that I was a natural athlete. I never went to practice. I didn't have to do any crazy thing. And my coach used to always say, like, how do you do this? And I said, I don't know. So I started at a young age to learn what my God-given abilities were. And then fast forwarding, I went, elementary, middle school. Once I got to high school is where my athleticism really like exploded, and I realized what I really wanted to do. It was only football. Only there was no security in mind. It was just straight football. I had UGA on my list. I had University of Miami. I ended up graduating in Florida. Ended up getting recruited by University of Miami. During my tenure at Miami, there was a lot of things that were starting to happen, especially my family. And then one summer, I had another buddy. He was working with Gavin Becker, and he was like, "Hey, man, maybe you should do security." Now, at this time, I already was doing security in high school, and I was like, "I like this." And the guy was like, "Yo, you're a natural." I was like, "But what did I do? I was just sitting at the door." But one thing I noticed about security, people watch you. They watch your manner, they watch your posture, and I didn't know that at first. Long story short, after college, when trying out for the NFL, after getting hurt kind of stopped me and slowed me down, I started doing security full time. And I was like, well, let me try it out. And next thing you know, I fell in love with security. If security came before football, I would never chose football. So that's how I got into it, because I was a natural athlete and I just took my abilities and took it into security. Now, in security world, I wanted to be a little bit different. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I wanted to establish something different in the security industry.
Now, tell folks about, most cops know about, who Gavin DeBecker is, and
Right.
we utilize his writing stuff. But tell folks real quick about going to that school and who he is.
It's almost like going into Men in Black. I remember getting recruited. They paid for everything. They flew me out there, and you had to wear a suit. When we get picked up, they put you in this little room. You don't know where it's at, and you're like, "Well, who the hell are these guys?" They're all looking at each other like, "Oh, I'm better than you." And it was honestly, it's like Men in Black. And then they take on the bus and they take you into this little camp. This camp was like a boys' camp. I'm not gonna say the location, but it's like a boys' camp. And when you get in there, it just changes. They have Oculus courses. They have a running course. They have a shoot house. They have a swimming pool. It is amazing. It's to me, it's similar like Secret Service. Similar training, similar combat. And the things that you learn are so powerful. I don't know if they still do it today, but when I was there, that is one of the most powerful academies you could probably go to. So that's what Gavin Becker is. I always tell people it's very similar to the Secret Service.
So you did really well, and then you started this life as private security. But you're not the guy riding around the mall in a golf cart,
No,
right?
no,
talk
no, no.
talk about some of your experiences and assignments.
Oh my gosh. I've worked with a couple of celebrities, actors, major actors. I'm not going to say their names, but these people are in TV shows every single day that you've seen. Some people started in the 90s. And to be around these people, you start to realize like, wait, they're normal, and then you see what they go through. It gives you a different perspective on life and how they view money, how they view their life, how they view others' lives. I've been around the top, artists, music artists. I've been around the CEO for these music companies. So I can honestly say I've done every type of security. I really can, from sitting in a warehouse, from sitting in front of a gas station, uh, in a cubicle, to artists, to overseas, to touring, to athletes. It's a really different world. It's kind of hard to explain, but you really gain respect, and you that's what opens up the doors. When you do every type of security, I think that's the most important thing. That's what makes people different.
So you became proficient in everything from hand to hand to, various firearms and weapons. And you ultimately moved into training other people, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So talk about your experiences as a trainer, because that's something, again, from a law enforcement perspective, we talk about that a lot, the importance of good training. And I'm going to presume that you applied your experiences as an athlete and an athlete who had been coached by different people to your own training. Talk about that.
So it's so important that being an athlete, it's almost identical in security, because again, as an athlete, you got to take care of your body. In security, you got to take care of your body. And being an athlete, you have to make sure you eat right. It's almost the same playing field. The only difference is you're not protecting somebody on the football field. You kind of are. You're protecting, the touchdown end zone. So it's very similar to being security and being an athlete, depending on what sport. So only thing I did was I took what I knew in sports. Then when I got into the security field, I then transformed it into a way that people can understand in the security form. Like when it comes to cleaning your gun, when it comes to uniform, when it comes to not printing, teaching these guys. And the biggest thing I teach is de-escalation. That is my biggest thing, because again, me playing defense, when you get upset, somebody scores on you. If you show that emotion, that wide receiver knows he's got to you. And then after that, you just crumple and just fall. Same thing in personal security. De-escalation is the biggest thing. You have to remove the threat, or you remove the principle from the threat. So it goes hand in hand. And I teach my guys, like, I don't put too much emphasis on being an athlete, but I show them why being an athlete is so important, or why it can help.
Now, we talk a lot in law enforcement training about de-escalation
Right.
and some of the other things that you talk about, and parallel the differences between being a police officer, who gets that 911 call to show up, and that private security officer who has this very specific job, very often in really unusual circumstances, right? Talk about that.
Well, so how I view that is really no difference. Private security is just there. Officers are not. So officers are more universal, if I would say that, because they're the ones that are circulating. We're the ones that are there at that certain moment in time. So we have a faster reaction time. And in being a police officer, I feel like they have more levels that they would have to go through. Ours is more instant because we're there with the client. And as a police officer, I would say that their job is a little bit harder, because again, you got to think about something. The way that we're trained, we're already there with the client. We're trained so much on de-escalation that is embodied into our spirit. Cops are not really trained so hardly on de-escalation because they have so much that they have to try to figure out, from learning all the codings, all the calls that they have to, the signals that they have to remember. So it's like me showing up to a person with a gunshot wound, and then an officer showing up to a person with a gunshot wound. There's certain steps that he has to take, that the public will not understand, calling it in. They're like, well, no, he needs help now. I have to call him in. So, and then an EP agent will go straight to the person and start wounding them up. It's a big difference because we're more hands-on. Officers are not, because of the liability. So, that's it. The liability is what separates private security and officers.
Now, you're a well-traveled guy. What's your opinion, just as an American, as to why crime has risen so much especially in the last 3.5, 4 years?
In America?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things, but I think my number one thing is because of whoever's in power. I mean, it starts from the top. We're just getting so soft. Nobody wants to tell the truth. Nobody wants to speak facts, and I think that's the problem. We're so stuck on this whole, LGBTQ, whatever it's called. We're so stuck on that we're removing the rights from people, from the average American. It's not to say that they can't fight for their rights. No, there's nothing wrong with that. We're all humans. But when you focus on something and then you forget about this over here, and then when this starts rising up, it's like, well, whoever's in power has to take control of that. And if they don't take control of that, guess who now takes control of that? We do. And then if we do, that's more liability. So again, I feel like it's really whoever's up top is just like a coach. Now that's why coaches get fired. They were like, well, you're in charge. So I feel like presidents should be able to get fired, because you're in charge. But at the end of the day, but that's just my point of view. It's whoever's really in power. I just feel like we're so weak now. We're so soft, and we don't want to talk about anything.
Are you seeing a rise in people utilizing private security as the numbers of law enforcement officers go down?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Because people are now starting to understand that. Wait. If you defund the police, right? And let me give you an example. You have people that are living in poverty, right? That will say F the police or whatever you want to do, right? When something happens, who do they call? The same people who they dislike. So it's like this. Once you start removing the people who are called to help you, and you start realizing like, holy crap, if I don't call them, who else can I call? So the people who do have the money, they're like, well, bump that. I'm hiring personal security because they don't want the liability. That's what officers are for, liability. Now we're taking over because we're more hands-on. They don't want the liability. So it's like private security is not competing with law enforcement. It's just that because of the overall view on police officers is making private security rise and rise and rise while officers down, down, down. So some officers are actually switching over. More money.
And that was my next question. So are you recruiting from law enforcement?
See, here's the thing though. I haven't recruited anybody. They've been coming to me, and sometimes they say, hey, part-time. Some officers say, I'm leaving the force. And it's only because of what's going on. They're not saying they're unhappy. They're just saying, listen, a lot of us are leaving. We don't have the backup we used to have. Some guys are like, I've been here for 10 years and it's not the same anymore. So now they're looking for the next best thing, because they have to feed their family, and I get it. I truly understand it. I get it.
So you in all of the things you do, I mean, you've done clothing, security, all this stuff. So you've come up with a new app that I'm so excited about because I travel a lot and I use, Uber and Lyft and rideshare rides all the time. And I'll be honest, I'm going to say it on national TV for the first time, a 64-year-old woman, when I am traveling alone and I'm jumping into somebody's rideshare car, I am usually able to be armed because of my prior law enforcement status, but a lot of people are not. And it's a little dicey. Plus, if you've got to go to an area, for example, my husband and I just got back from Minneapolis. There's a lot of areas of that city that are a little dicey for people to be in. You gave this whole thing a lot of thought and came up with something new. Talk about that.
All right. So let me tell you how the idea even started. It didn't start off as an app for everybody, right? How the idea started was I was transporting a young girl back and forth to school. Her mom was caught in sex trafficking. So in my initial thought, I said, I want to create my own transportation line for children, like my own bus line. But then I'm not going to be competing with the yellow buses. There's no way. And I already know the cost. I can't go and buy a bus. It's the yellow tape you got to go through. No. So that's how it originally started. It started for children. I said, how can I create something because of all this child abduction and especially in Atlanta, sex trafficking, kidnapping? I wanted to stop it. That was my initial thought. As I kept thinking, I created a presentation. And I still have the original presentation. I can show anybody how it originally started. And people were like, that's how it started? Like, yeah, it was pretty cool. So long story short, it took me about 8 months to really gather my thoughts, even after the presentation. And after 8 months, It took me 2 weeks to create that. It wasn't even that long. 2 weeks. Because again, it was already in my brain. I'm like, I kept asking God, what do you need me to do? So one day I just sat and I just prayed. I prayed to the point where I started sweating. And he gave me the idea. And then that's how everything got started. And my thing is this, and I'm gonna tell you this, Bessie. I always wanted to be the face of security or the person with the greatest impact. That is my goal. And I think that should be the goal for any young person getting into this field. You want to make the biggest impact in security. And, later on, I'm going to explain to you why I'm even saying that. But to answer your question, that's how it originally started.
So, there's got to be just an enormous amount of financial investment and then regulation you've got to think about. Because again, right now in the United States, the laws concerning, firearms and things like that. I mean, there just must have been so much red tape you had to process through, at least mentally, to come up with Black Wolf.
Mentally, yes. Mentally, yes. In a physical form, no. Because once you know each state law and you understand it, you know how to move. The best thing for me was my legal team, my lawyer and my CEO now, Charles Liu in California. He's experienced in this game. It's funny. He used to do security too. So and he knows pretty much everybody that regulates certain things. So he's been teaching me as well. My team is so important to me. They can help me, even though I know the law myself, because you have to know the law yourself when you become a PI. You got to know every state. So I've been studying. Trust me, before I came on this app, I studied, especially New York. I would say New York, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Those are some of the hardest states. California, it's hard, but when you have the right people, it's not. So of course I had to do my homework. But I would say this: when you have the right team, knowing the right people, things go a little bit smoother or a little bit quicker. But you still got to follow the laws.
So tell us how it's going to work.
So the app is very unique, right? And I know everybody just thinks it's just an armed Uber. No, no, no. First of all, it's not even Uber, and it's not compared to Uber. What I want people to understand is this: as the driver, which is your CPP, as a rider, you're now the client. That ride is called a detail. It's not a ride. I want to separate that. We're not a normal rideshare company. You have armed, you have unarmed. There's no difference. There's no difference. That driver is still the same person that's trained, tactically sound, everything. Then you have school executive protection drivers, meaning that this app is a youth-friendly app because we have, cameras in our vehicles with live streaming, GPS tracking. Then you have convoy escorting. That's not out yet. I haven't pushed it out yet, but I'm telling you, convoy escorting works like this. Let's say you and your husband, let's say it's an anniversary. You guys want to go out. You don't have to get in my vehicle, but we'll follow you. We'll make sure you get to the restaurant safe. We'll wait for you. And then once you're ready to go home, we'll follow you back home. And I always tell my drivers, whenever you're going back home, we're escorting you, never go straight into your driveway at first. Always go past it, circle, then come back. That's how I teach my drivers because there's a lot of that following home, especially in California. That's why a lot of these people are getting robbed because they're not understanding their awareness, their environment. And I'm teaching even the public like this is what security is about. This is how you should even act. Even if you don't use us, we should be able to give tips to the general public. And that's how I see fit. So the app is that unique. The app is to the point where if you want travel protection, click on the button. It's like a mobile executive protection company.
So here's one of the things that struck me about you when I first looked at you and your background. You truly are a role model, and I'm guessing that you have a lot of young people who look up to you, and I get the impression you take that seriously, right?
Oh man, because yeah, I do, but it's still weird, because it's like to be in this position now where people will text me out the blue or hit me up on IG and say, man, I'm so proud of you, man. You encourage me. It's like I'm still getting used to it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still getting, but yes. Do a lot of people look up to me? Yes. But it's a weird feeling. I'm not used to it yet.
Well,
Not yet.
well, and I got to tell you, we just have a couple of minutes left, but but I really do believe you're going to change the face of private security. I got to ask you one more thing. How do you get along with the local law enforcement when you're doing a job, doing a detail?
Oh man, I mean honestly, like I live in Walton County. Like they love me. Like they know my car. You know, it's one of those type of situations where if I go to Gwinnett County and they know I'm working, they're like, "Oh, you're the Black Wolf guy." I'm like, "Yes, sir." They're like, "Oh, yeah," because again, it's about respect. I'm not competing with anybody. I want to help them. Like officers need help too. Who helps them? Nobody helps them. So I want to create something where it helps everybody. I'm not in competition with anybody.
What are your thoughts, real quick, on people, just normal citizens getting armed and trained just to go out and do their daily lives?
Honestly, in today's world, I think it's very necessary. I really do. In order to protect yourself and to understand how, firearms even work, to understand your surroundings, that is the most important thing. Because again, not only are you going to save your life, you may be able to save somebody else's, and you just being a normal citizen. So I think it's very impactful that you do learn that.
I'll tell you, Kerry, I wish we had about another 3 hours because I got about 57 more questions for you. But tell people where they can find you. When do you think the app's going to roll out? Anything you want folks to know?
Well, we have Facebook, we have IG, we have TikTok, and we have Instagram, Black Wolf App. And our website is blackwolfapp.com. And the app is already live. Our next stop is LA, mid-July.
Absolutely. I already have the app on my phone, by the way, so I'm super excited.
Right.
I'll tell you, Kerry KingBrown, thanks so much for spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.